Have you ever been swept up in a moment? Maybe at a protest or a rally, or even just seeing something go viral online, where your own rational judgment seemed to just vanish.
Hmm.
That feeling, that surprising, sometimes frankly weird power of the collective mind, that's exactly what we're exploring today.
Yeah, it's a powerful force.
We're doing a deep dive into Gustave Le Bon's, seismic 1895 classic, Psychologie des foules, the psychology of crowds.
A foundational text.
Right, it's over a century old, but the way it describes mass influence, it feels incredibly relevant, maybe even chillingly so, for our own digital age.
Absolutely. And to really get Le Bon, you need to picture the time he was writing in. Late 19th century, huge disruption.
How so?
Well, old beliefs were crumbling monarchy, divine right, rigid social orders. And at the same time, you had modern science, industry, mass democracy all rising up.
A real turning point.
Exactly. Le Bon saw all this and believed it was ushering in what he called the era of crowds. So our mission today is really to dissect his mechanism, sometimes terrifying, for how this collective soul forms.
And then connect that back to today, right? To our own information dilemmas.
Precisely. How do his ideas hold up now? Where are they challenged?
And his core idea is pretty radical, isn't it? He says the unconscious action of crowds basically replaces conscious individual thought entirely.
It does. He saw the crowd, the foul, as the single unstoppable force of the new age. Traditional powers, obsolete.
The divine right of kings replaced by the divine right of crowds, as he put it.
That's the famous phrase. But okay, let's start with the basics. What is a psychological crowd for Le Bon? It's not just people standing near each other.
Right, it's more than just numbers.
For a foul to form, individuals have to point their feelings, their ideas in the exact same direction. The second that happens, they fall under the law of mental unity.
Okay, and this is where it gets, well, really interesting and maybe a bit humbling for us as individuals.
How so?
Once that unity clicks in, Le Bon says the individual personality just vanishes. Your conscious, critical self gets swapped out for the unconscious, or what he calls the medullary life.
Yeah, that medullary life term is dramatic, but he means something specific. It's primitive, deep, instinctive, like reducing the individual back to, well, a primal state, a savage or a child.
And the intellect takes a hit.
Big one.
Okay.
He calls that abaissement de l'intelligence, a lowering of individual brain power.
Okay, so that time I ended up buying that ridiculous foam finger at the stadium just because everyone else was chanting. That was my medullary life taking over.
Bone would probably say yes. He became a grain of sand, as he puts it. No real free will in that moment.
Wow.
But here's a crucial point. This transformation isn't always negative. The feelings that emerge can actually be better or worse than the individual's usual ones.
So a crowd can be heroic.
Easily heroic, capable of huge sacrifice, or just as easily criminal and impulsive. It swings wildly.
And he points to three causes for this dramatic switch, right? First, the sense of invincible power and anonymity.
Exactly. You feel powerful, part of something big, and crucially irresponsible. So you give in to instincts you'd normally control.
Okay. And second,
Contagion. This is purely mental. Ideas, feelings, they spread like wildfire, instantaneously, like an emotional virus sweeping through the group.
got it. And the third one, he says this is the most important.
Suggestibility. This is the engine. The individual loses that conscious personality, becomes almost like someone under hypnosis.
Yeah.
They just obey suggestions from outside.
Even acting totally against their normal character.
Especially then. This suggestibility creates this irresistible urge, this impetuosity towards action, whatever action is suggested.
Okay, so let's unpack the traits of this collective mind once it's actually formed. What does it look like? You mentioned impulsivity.
Right. Impulsivity and mobility are key. Actions are never thought out, never premeditated. They're just reactions to whatever stimulus is right there, right now.
And it can swing wildly.
Totally. From, extreme violence to absolute heroism in a heartbeat. It's raw, immediate, unpredictable. Think of a general suddenly inspiring thousands to die for a cause they hadn't considered moments before.
And because it's so impulsive, critical thinking goes out the window.
Completely. Which brings us to the second trait, exaggeration and simplism. The crowd sees everything en bloc, as Le Bon says.
Yeah.
No nuance.
Black and white thinking.
Always. Sentiments are simple, extreme, intellectually. The crowd is always inferior to the isolated individual thinking alone. Always.
So if it operates on impulse and sees things in extremes, what happens if you try to bring in facts or logical arguments?
According to Le Bon, nothing. Reason is useless. Utterly useless.
Seriously, no influence at all.
He insists. Crowd reasoning is basic, inferior. It relies on superficial links like analogy or just one thing happening after another, like a child reasons. Logical arguments, they just bounce off.
That's a huge claim, though, isn't it? If logic doesn't work, how do any organized movements, for civil rights or scientific progress or even just sensible political reforms, how do they ever get off the ground?
That's the tension in his work. He seems to imply that any really large-scale change has to tap into something non-rational.
Which maybe explains why he focuses so much on illusion and credulity.
Exactly. He argues that what really grabs the crowd is the marvelous, the legendary. Reality takes a backseat to the extraordinary story.
So crowds are gullible.
Highly credulous, yes. And they can't really separate what they're imagining or feeling from objective reality. He talks about collective hallucinations, even among educated people.
Like that spiritualism example, M. Davy.
Right. Scientists, trained observers, totally fooled by simple stage magic. Why? Because they were already in that suggestible crowd state. Their critical thinking switched off. They couldn't see the hoax for what it was.
Which also explains why eyewitness accounts from crowds can be so unreliable.
Precisely. He mentions General Wolseley on the Battle of Waterloo. Hundreds of witnesses, yet the collective memory was full of major errors. The group's subjective picture just overwrote the facts.
Okay, so moving beyond the immediate triggers, Le Bon talks about beliefs. He says all crowd beliefs, political, social, religious, they all take on a religious form. What does he mean by that? Not actual religion, necessarily.
Not necessarily belief in God, no. He means they demand blind submission, fierce intolerance of any dissent, and worshiping an idol, which could be a leader, an idea, a nation, anything.
Like a political ideology becoming a sort of religion.
Exactly, that kind of dynamic.
Unquestioning.
Unquestioning faith, intolerance of heretics.
So we've got the immediate sparse anonymity, suggestion, lowered intellect. But Le Bon digs deeper, right, into the underlying factors that shape these crowds over time.
He does. He argues there are deep, distant factors. And the big ones for him are race and traditions. He sees these as the absolute core, the synthesis of the collective soul, exerting this huge, constant influence.
Okay, now we need to pause here. This focus on race or origin. This is the part of Le Bon that modern social science largely rejects, right?
Overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
It's seen as ethnocentric, lacking scientific basis. But we have to be clear, for Le Bon in 1895, this was central to his argument. It was his foundation.
Understood. It's his argument we're examining, and maybe that focus on deep national character is why he's so skeptical about institutions changing anything fundamental.
Yes, he sees institutions as just the effect of a people's character and ideas, not the cause. He thought it was a huge mistake to believe you could fix society just by changing the rules or the government structure.
You can't just legislate a new national soul, basically.
That seems to be his view. And he applies that same harsh skepticism to education.
Ah, yes, his critique of the French system.
The Latin system, he called it. All rote learning, abstract stuff. He argues it fails completely to build practical skills, initiative, judgment.
And instead it creates, what was the phrase?
An immense army of discontented. People educated out of manual work but not into practical roles, making them resentful and, in his view, prone to radical ideas like anarchy and socialism.
And he contrasts that with the Anglo-Saxon system.
Right, which he saw as prioritizing practical experience and character building.
Okay, fascinating. So if reason fails, institutions are just reflections, education might even make things worse. How on earth do leaders, the manures, actually manage to influence these crowds?
Purely through the non-rational, the unconscious. Crowds crave a leader, instinctively. Though Le Bon notes, ironically, the most effective leaders are often just men of action, themselves sort of hypnotized by one big idea they embody.
Right, and he gives them specific tools, means of action. First is affirmation.
Simple, direct statements. No need for proof, just stated strongly.
Second,
Repetition. This is key. He quotes Napoleon saying, "Repetition is the only serious form of rhetoric. You just keep saying it."
until it sinks in.
Until it becomes an accepted truth, lodged deep in that unconscious collective mind, no longer questioned.
And the third tool ties into that, contagion.
Exactly. The repeated affirmation catches on, spreads like that mental virus we talked about, often starting lower down the social ladder and moving up until everyone accepts it.
But the ultimate weapon in the leader's arsenal
Is prestige.
Yeah.
This almost magical fascination that just paralyzes your critical thinking, shuts it down completely.
And he splits that into two types.
Yes. There's acquired or artificial prestige. Think titles, uniforms, wealth, reputation. A judge's robe, a general's uniform. It comes with the role.
Okay. And the other type?
Personal prestige. This is different. It's innate, powerful, independent. Think Napoleon, Christ, Muhammad, figures who just command belief.
That personal kind sounds almost supernatural.
It has that effect. It allows the leader to impose ideas, dogmas that are just accepted, no questions asked. Remember that story about General Augureau?
The fierce revolutionary general.
Yeah, admitting he felt like trembling like a child before Napoleon, who at the time was just this young, relatively unknown officer.
Yeah.
That's personal prestige in action. It short-circuits everything else.
It's the ultimate bypass of reason. Okay, so that brings us right up to today. If these tools, repetition, affirmation, paralyzing prestige, are the keys, how does Le Bon's work look in our world?
Well, that's the crucial question, isn't it? His work was hugely influential, but the methodology, especially the race part, is obviously outdated.
Right, we reject that strongly. But his observations about the psychology, the impulsivity, the contagion, the suggestibility, you could argue technology has put those on steroids.
I think you absolutely could.
Yeah.
Modern researchers look at context, social structure, the media environment, and when you overlay Le Bon's mechanisms onto that,
Yeah.
it's incredibly illuminating.
How so? Take digital contagion.
Okay. Le Bon saw ideas spreading instantly in a physical crowd. Now, algorithms are literally designed to make things spread instantly, virality. And what spreads fast is often this simple, extreme, emotionally charged stuff, not the nuanced facts.
So the digital crowd, even though we're all physically separate, can still fall under that law of mental unity through filter bubbles, echo chambers.
Precisely. Your social media feed can become a perfect engine of repetition and affirmation. An algorithm feeds you one simple idea, maybe a grievance, over and over. It gets embedded. It becomes your truth, the truth of your online group.
And what about prestige? Has that changed?
It's evolved. It's not just the general's uniform anymore. It's the blue check mark, the huge follower count, the perfectly curated online image. It's this instant, often artificial authority the platform gives you.
And that can paralyze critical thinking just as effectively.
Arguably, yes. It functions in a similar way to how Le Bon described Napoleon's effect on Augureau. It bypasses critical assessment.
So this raises a massive question for right now. If the crowd, digital or physical, is defined by unconsciousness and suggestibility, are we still in the era of crowds, just a global distributed version?
It feels like it, doesn't it?
And if so, can a true collectivity, organized, reflective citizens thinking together, can that even exist when the tech seems built to amplify suggestion and emotion?
That's the challenge. Achieving genuine collective responsibility, making reasoned decisions together, is incredibly difficult when the environment is constantly pushing us towards those Le Bonian crowd dynamics, towards exaggerated simplisms.
How do we resist being governed by algorithmic whims and emotional spikes?
Very good question.
Okay, let's leave everyone with a final thought, actually from Le Bon himself. It really makes you think, especially looking back at the last 100 years or so. He said, if crowds had often reasoned and consulted their immediate interests, civilization would not have developed.
Wow.
Does history actually show that the biggest leaps, the greatest actions, for good or for ill, are always fueled by these non-rational, explosive sentiments of the crowd?
And perhaps we can ask you to consider this.
Yeah.
Those powerful, self-sacrificing feelings Le Bon thought drove civilizations. Honneur, abnégation, amour de la patrie, honor, self-sacrifice, love of country.
Right.
Are these noble exceptions to the irrational crowd?
War.
Or are they simply the most potent suggestions employed by leaders with immense prestige to mobilize masses towards world-changing, sometimes devastating action?
Something to definitely chew on. That's been the deep dive. We'll see you next time.